and welcome to the Hevi AI Podcast, the podcast where we explore the intersection of AI, technology, and heavy industry. I'm Paul Culvenor.
And I'm Brad Gyngell.
And together we've built Hevi, your AI-powered contract administration platform for heavy industry. We've got episode 2 today. It's just going to be Brad and I talking amongst ourselves. Episode 1, we had me interviewing Brad, and today it's going to be Brad interviewing me. So I'll throw it over to Brad to dive into what we're getting into today.
Yes, the tables have turned.
Yeah, get my chair.
Maybe we should start reflecting on episode 1.
Well, I think it was a lot less cringy than I was anticipating, I guess, listening back. So hopefully that feeling is mutual amongst our handful of early listeners, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The dedicated core supporters out there.
In 10 years' time, when we become the Scott Farquhar and Mike Cannon-Brooks of the mining tech space, people can look back and laugh at how young and impressionable we were.
That's it. And for the meantime, everyone has to, cut a slack for we're mining engineers. We're not professional podcasters.
Exactly.
But let's jump in to the questions. So I guess like we did last time, let's kind of go a little bit chronologically. I think you'd suggested starting with early career, but I've known you for your career, since we're 18. So maybe we start
earlier than that. Well, I was born in a small country town in central Victoria.
Yeah, perfect.
Dad was a sheep farmer and mum was a maths teacher.
Perfect combination.
That inspired my love of maths and science. Yeah, I guess like any country Victoria. So yeah, seriously, country Victorian kid, sheep farmer by background. And then because I was exposed to lots of farming and sheep shearing over school holidays as a young buck, I knew that I didn't want to go into farming. So it was like anything but initially. And then I guess, maths, science, very much a strong suit. Had aspirations of professional sports as a young buck, as well as like cricket and football, and played a bunch of rep stuff. I always say that my claim to fame, and I think it's still on my LinkedIn bio as well, is that like I was Dustin Martin's captain in Castlemaine under 16s, who went on to then be a AFL great. So always that's my claim to fame in that sort of realm.
You're always going to be better.
Exactly. I actually beat him in our best and fairest that year, so I can say that I would have gone on to, many Norm Smith medals and premierships if I had kept going. So, but anyway,
you chose this path instead.
Yeah, exactly. It's a much more rewarding career than being a multi-million-dollar a year AFL player. Definitely. But yeah, I guess from that it's like. I think I did a knee in year 12, and so I spent 12 months, well, pretty much all my year 12 on crutches and in a brace. And so it's like, hey, sport's done for good. Let's get real about life and money, etc. And then like mining at the time was like, okay, Google highest paying salaries. It's mining engineering. Okay, that picks up a bit of an interest. What does that do? And then at the same time, like my uncle is actually a geologist, and he was working at the Stawell gold mine then. So this is back in 2007. He did a bunch of work at Kalgoorlie. Like my cousins were born in Kalgoorlie, was at Telfer for a while, and I think did some stuff at Cadia, and then was head geologist of Fosterville for many, many years. And so I guess I did a bit of work experience at the back end of year 12 at Stawell gold mine, in the survey engineering department, just to sort of see, okay, this is what engineers do. I remember the first time going underground there, which I think was probably my first time going underground. The surveyors took me to the bottom of the decline down at Stawell, which was probably still 1.6 k's deep. And it was, go from air-conditioned Land Cruiser to instant sweat, super duper, like hot, wet bulb temperature. And you're like, okay, this is interesting. So and then from there it was, okay, smart enough to do some mining. And then I again wanted to move out of home and move to the big city and be a silly teenager at uni. So I decided to move interstate as well to try and get away from everyone and tread my own path. And I always say like my claim to fame within the family is like I left home at 18 or 2 weeks after turning 18 and then never returned. and have just always lived out of Victoria since then. And then moving to Sydney.
Progressively further north as well.
Oh, exactly. And I can't go further south beyond like March to November because it's just too cold now. So yeah, again, then jumped into UNSW mining engineering, 2008, and met you, and the rest is history.
That's it. So yeah, nothing notable before I came along.
Oh, exactly. And then the real fun started.
So it's really cool. And then I guess you talked a bit about how, the engineering experience from working in mining kind of got you into mining. Then once you were in mining, what was a bit of your experience during uni of working in around different?
Yeah, so I did a couple of vac works, one in open cut hard rock out at Cadia when the pit was still running, and did a bunch of like sort of technical stuff, working obviously for Newcrest at the time, so it was very much technical engineering. And then did a stint with Xstrata at the time, which is now Glencore, in underground coal at a colliery in Lithgow. And yeah, again, technical like engineering stuff, which is interesting and challenging and the like. But I guess and always sort of wanted to be more businessy and more business orientated and minded as well, because that's where like it's fun to play with money as numbers as much as it's fun to play with like and technical numbers and like theoretical numbers when doing hectic maths. But yeah, at the end of the day, like it's all business. And so I think my early exposure to sort of the practical challenges within mining and how that relates to the overall business like of mining was probably really what triggered a bit of interest in me. And then I guess moving into the grad phase, I started with Downer Mining, so contract miner rather than a client as well. And I think that was sort of a good step to get more into that business operations space, to be like, okay, there's still technical engineering challenges. You're still responsible for plans, like less so around design and the drill and blast stuff that you've done a lot of. But more sort of, the technical challenges, and then linking that all back to the financial outcomes of a contracting business. And that's what sort of started me on that trajectory to be sort of, the more businessy, commercial, contractual side of mining.
And obviously the role as president of Mining Society at UNSW.
I was managing tens of thousands of mining enrollment dollars for barbecues and running raffles with passion pop skulls, etc.
Yes, the primary duty.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting that you talk about getting that exposure to that businessy side early, because that was definitely a big difference between our two careers. Like I remember my very first development plan that they make you write when you join any job, and I think I wrote in it that like I never want to do anything to do with commercial and business. I just want to be deep nerd technical. And tried to avoid it, and it wasn't until quite a few years later that I realized you can't avoid it. Like,
exactly.
The only reason the mind's there is money.
It's probably like a failure of like the education system more broadly, or even like the tertiary education system. And like, unless you're doing like a business or commerce related degree, like everything is business, and like every input into a business affects the business. So like you need to understand dollars and cents at some way or another to like truly understand, okay, well, where's my value in the chain of the business and the function of an organization, to try and like maximize your own little niche of that organization.
I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people end up getting disheartened with their jobs, and because they don't see that big picture. They don't see, why is what I do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why is it important? I'm just a cog in a machine and I don't see the direct outcome of me doing this widget over and over again. How does that affect us?
Yeah. So
I guess I tried to do some of that in my early career on site as a project engineer, try and relate some of that back to like operations teams who they don't know how an organization like a Downer Mining or any contract miner gets paid. It's like, I'm a jumbo operator or I'm a bogger driver. I just get paid to move dirt or drill holes. Like, but how does that like good performance or bad performance or like great performance affect the overall structure of the business and then profitability of the business and then tenure of jobs and contracts and like, stability of mines even like.
Absolutely. And I guess linking it back to a personal note for them, their own job stability and their own
exactly.
progression, career-wise, all those kind of things. It's like it's hard to see that when all you get told is, do this faster. You must tip your first load by this time. You must tip the last load after this time.
I should probably be negligent of me to avoid not address the fact that like I did a bunch of underground time and hated it. So therefore I was like, how do I get into the office ASAP? And then how do I get offsite into a head office role ASAP as well? I was like, FIFO and underground life isn't for me, but how do I like swindle my way into a good role in those organizations? Because like I still enjoyed the work and still enjoyed the challenging environment that they put forward. But like day to day, I didn't want to throw bolts and drive trucks and blow shit up. I was like, no, get me out of here.
And it's good that you can be honest about it. Like there's so much ego in mining a lot of the time. A lot of people put up with situations that they don't like. This is, not just but just pretty broadly, like people, there are a lot of people who are struggling in mining who don't say anything about it.
Oh, there's a bunch of people like when I did to like make those couple of hops and jumps in, well, like I was 22 or 3 and was working in head office in Brisbane, and they're like, how did you like do that? I'm still stuck driving a truck. And I was like, yeah, like I guess what like I did do that I think added value to it was like, okay, understand the needs of a business and try and like add value within that, like where there is gaps. So part of it, like when I first started out on site, was that we had a like a Downer owned proprietary production management system. So a bunch of data entry. The underground business wasn't using it to its full effect. So like a PM would ask, hey, how's our like development performance trended over the last 6 months? And like, who are the good jumbo operators? Or like, what are our TKMs per hour on our truck fleet? And like, who are our best truckies and operators? And no one could answer that question. So I like put my hand up to be like, okay, we've got a shipping container full of archive boxes of all of our paper plods over the last like 12 months. Give me 3 months and I'll go and manually enter all of these into our system and come back with some technical analysis for you. And so like that was the first step to like, okay, now I can do some work that I don't mind and apply like some technical challenges to some problems, to then like start that progression to like office type roles rather than operational type roles. And then I guess getting into that sort of data crunching and analysis piece, then leveraged into like managing the claim and sort of monthly invoice process and really understanding the contract, like how we get paid. And you even talk to like shift bosses and foremen out on site, and they wouldn't understand how you get paid. They'd be like, oh, the client's asked us to do this. And they'd complain because it's not their ego-driven like meters and tons. It's like, oh, we have to do this shitty rehab that like, oh, that isn't like good dollars for us. But realistically, it was like probably making more money than just like genuine meters and tons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need the data to make those decisions. And it sounds like you put in took the initiative to jump on that project, and that's what accelerated you into the office career. So, tips for any new players out there, any grads who are looking for how to get ahead.
Find somewhere where you can add value and the business needs, or there's a gap for in the business that you think you can fill. Put your hand up to have a crack, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like you can always go back to like driving trucks and blowing shit up. Like there's always a need for that in engineering world.
Yeah, I remember when I graduated as well, thinking like everything was so linear, these career progressions up the chain. But I mean, once you work in a few different companies, you realize there's so many different functions being performed by people with varying job titles everywhere. You can go in a million different directions.
Yeah, and even like looking at the people that we went to uni with, like the amount of people who are like now not in mining at all.
Yep.
Well, I guess we're still in mining adjacent industry, like providing tech solutions to mining, but like there's a bunch in finance or investment banking or management consulting or miscellaneous other tech ventures that are nothing to do with mining. So like where you start is definitely not where you may end up.
Yep.
That's for sure.
100%. Let's put. Awesome. So, all right, we've talked about uni days, early days at Downer. Now let's get into kind of as you progress through your career from being a grad, where'd you go after that?
Yeah, so I guess once I got into the office, Downer Mining Underground Division was sort of a small team and looking to grow. And I guess, I sort of jumped into the tendering and engineering space pretty quickly from there. So like, I guess, natural progression was doing a bunch of number crunching and engineering type project data and project optimization and stuff and equipment utilization work. Naturally lent to sort of the tendering space because it's like, hey, you've just analyzed our last project for the last 12 months. Like we should be putting some of those performance metrics into our tender models. So like one of my first early projects in head office was building a new tender model Excel sheet from scratch. So that was fun. It was like, I got a bunch of old historic ones that people had from their previous jobs. And got to build a U-Butte Excel model for our tenders that we ended up using on every job that we then won while Downer Mining existed, which is pretty cool. Went through and like we ended up, I think we grew the business from like 20 mil a year to 300 mil rev sort of before it wound up when Downer Mining sold the business and COVID sort of shut down a couple of our international contracts that we had. And I guess, some of the sort of notable things during that time was like, we had a couple of contracts up in PNG. So I had a couple of trips up to PNG, which was pretty cool for a place to be so close to Australia, but yet so different to Australia. And then I spent 2 weeks in West Africa in Ghana. That was probably 2011, 2012, I reckon. It's probably 2013, 14. So 10 years ago. Again, amazing experience to do these site visits. We were tendering a couple of mines over there that were Newmont mines that were $1 billion contracts, like massive scopes of work. So to go and see sort of different parts of the world and see how it all works was super interesting. And then we had a contract in South Africa as well, which was at Palabora. That was like the mine is literally on or like just outside of the Palabora National Park.
Oh, nice.
So I had a couple of site visits over there where you just cheekily go for a little drive around the national park. And it was always funny. You'd like drive between, you had the hotel that like the expats stayed at, or we had that scope of work was literally like a game reserve sort of style hotel. So it's like you're staying in accommodation with tourists, and then instead of going out to see animals, you're going to work underground. And you used to get to see like elephants and like hippos and monkeys and stuff like on your commute to work every day.
It's still a lot better than a lot of mining camps in the middle of the desert in Australia.
Oh, exactly. And then I guess we had a bunch of projects around the world, bunch in Australia. As I then went from sort of like the engineering and tendering side of things to have the opportunity to be sort of the commercial manager of the business. And sort of for the last probably 4 years of its existence was the commercial manager of the underground business, and managed to tackle all those challenges that sort of came our way. Pretty much every site that we had some type of commercial and contractual issue. Just general sort of delay, variation stuff that gets missed, or people not understanding our rights within contracts or our sort of compliance and risk levels that we can accept. So you'd have PMs or engineers on site that are making calls that, hey, there's a commercial consideration to that, but you don't find out about it until months after the fact. We had a couple of projects that, to be honest, were pretty pear-shaped and ended up losing millions of dollars as well. So like we saw everything from the tens of thousands of dollars a month all the way up to millions of dollars over the course of projects. And I guess, that's like sort of moving into the heavy space. And what we're doing now is like, yeah, it was very, very sort of common theme that kept coming through was like, and stuff that we say on our website, on our sales decks and everything that we talk through is like operational people who you have on site managing these projects that are multi-billion-dollar projects, from either a mining client side, a contractor side, or a subcontractor side. Like, not many people who are managing those scopes of work are commercial professionals, business trained, or let alone legal trained. And yet you've got a multi-100-page contract, which is essentially your rule book that you need to manage, while executing like operational requirements. And like, when you've got a client that's breathing down your neck saying, hey, I need to hit X number of meters and tons to hit our budget, otherwise we're not going to get paid and you're not going to get paid, and blah, blah, blah. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to react to that versus, hey, I've got this contract here that says X, Y, Z. So, yeah, it was all great, like, learning experience, and to be exposed to sort of a very wide range of operating environments, wide range of operational sort of requirements, and even just contract models. Like, we had plenty of different contract types, and each of them had their own intricacies and challenges. Like, you'd assume that some are like, there's a risk spectrum of contract operating models, and you assume that if you've got one that's on the lower risk side, that there's like less risk at that, therefore I can sit back and relax and it'll be fine, we'll get paid and we'll make lots of money. Yeah, I've seen where that has also gone bad and it hasn't made lots of money. So yeah.
What kind of risk, what are those types of different contracts, just to bring it to life for our less contractually savvy users, listeners out there?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, you have a full sort of like schedule rate style contract where you don't get paid anything unless you are performing. So like a dollars per ton, dollars per meter, dollars per drill meter type stuff. It's like, if you're not physically performing mining activities, you're unlikely to get paid, or at least not getting paid the full gamut of rates that you should be. That's sort of like seen as quite more the higher risk model. And then you'll have like on the other end of the spectrum is sort of like an alliance-y cost plus type model, where you'll get reimbursed for your costs if it's in the cost plus space, or like an alliance style is sort of cost plus adjacent, but not fully sort of de-risked. I've worked on a couple of alliance projects and they're more in the space of like cost model sort of based. So, and then you have direct costs which are reimbursed under a contract, and then you'll have agreed variations to those fixed costs, and then you'll have KPI modifiers around like forecast versus budget, actual dollar performance, as well as like KPIs around physical performance, safety performance, any other sort of quantitative or qualitative KPIs that contracts want to have. And then you've got a range in the middle there that's sort of like in the spectrum of fixed and variable. So ones where quite often you'll get paid for like equipment dollars per month. A truck's on site, you get paid X amount of dollars per truck per month. Same with some of the staff roles. So like, you may have some staff that are dollars per month for a project manager or dollars per month for an engineer. And then we had a couple of contracts which were like all fixed labor. So you got paid $1 per shift for every shift that was worked by the blue collar workforce as well. So and I'm sure, like, I've been sort of out of the game for a few years now, so I'm sure that's sort of the sort of standard models, and there's probably more that have variations of the theme that are in play. Mining, typically, I've never seen a lump sum type model that a lot of like construction and infrastructure projects will have, where it's like, hey, here's a hard dollar amount, you're going to get paid $100 million for this project over the next 2 years. It's your responsibility to manage the performance and whatever your costs are, or your costs to bear, and you'll only get paid 100 mil. Like, that's like atypical in mining, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I guess mining's a bit more of like continuous operation. A lot of the time, and it's like you're assuming the mine's going to operate for longer than the contract is, and it's about getting as much as you can out, rather than saying, okay, now you're done. You're not gonna finish early.
It's completely different to like, hey, we need to build a bridge, or we need to build a building as a starting point and an end point. It's like, we need to build a mine. We know that we're digging gold, copper, like lithium, zinc, silver, whatever. And you'll have a long-term mine plan and a medium-term mine plan, and then you'll have like a 12-month budget that's half real, and then you'll have quarterly forecasts that are sort of more real, and then you'll have like a monthly plan or a 12-week rolling forecast that gets, I guess, more tangent, like based on the daily activities. And then you've got a shift plan or a weekly plan, which is, in theory, pretty real. But yeah, quite often, like, schedule compliance is a massive issue in the space, because everything is quite hand to mouth. Like commodity prices is a varying factor for mining clients. So like if they're unhedged in terms of the product that they're selling on their outputs from their operation, and there's volatility in that, you want to have flexibility to be able to adjust the variables on the input side to then say, like, okay, how are we optimizing our own business model and operating model to make sure that we're maximizing our own value as an organization as well.
Absolutely. It might be, this new pit that we have planned is suddenly not economical because the price just dropped. And so as a mine owner, you want to be able to go, let's not mine that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a bunch of cool, like, other tech companies that are sort of playing in that space as well around schedule optimization. With like,
it's not just all whittle like we did at uni.
I don't even think that's, I have never seen that. And I reckon Telpac's probably the other one that we use at uni that I don't think I've ever seen like in actual operation. Not to badmouth other software companies, but but yeah, there's a bunch of like cool tech and other softwares that, like, that's a massive problem space in itself. Like, there's a bunch of variables of a mine, and ultimately you've got a bunch of inputs to try and like pull dirt out of the ground in a most cost effective and efficient manner, and then, like, from a processing side as well, it's like you've got varying like quality of ore going in one end, and then a form of concentrate or a form of product at the back end that you're then selling. Yeah, there's a lot of variables and different things that needing to be optimized or AI-ified, if you will, as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you've got optimization at that individual step of the process level, and then you've got it across the entire mine process, like mine to mill optimization level, and then you've got, okay, how much should we be producing, and should we even be running the mine at all?
Yeah,
we need to put this into care and maintenance with that kind of asset portfolio level view that a big mining company will have. Level. So there's a lot of commercial analysis and decisions happening every day, and kind of tying it back to what we were saying before, it's something that does run the industry, and it's just important for everyone to be aware of who's working in the industry.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like you said, a lot of the time that big picture view is kind of lost by the people administering or the projects in reality, often because of urgent day-to-day needs, and then also just backgrounds. You spent 10 plus years in commercial field, whereas other people have never had that commercial training behind them. So
yeah, I think it's like you sort of default to what you know and what you're good at when you're faced with a problem. Like, what's the saying? It's like to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm probably guilty of that. You're probably guilty of that. Like, in terms of our skill sets and how we tackle problems. Like, I know, like,
build AI software to solve that.
Yeah,
AI software to solve that.
That's probably the solution now. But like, I guess in the last 10 years, it's been like, understanding variables and data and inputs and trying to analyze trends and then make decisions based on that. And I think for operational people, it's more like, okay, I know that I can work with a mining crew to optimize their performance based on the factors that I can control. And that's not necessarily like in the best interest of the operation from an operations perspective, but or even from a commercial perspective, from a contracting perspective as well. So
yeah, and I guess it takes a balance, right? Like someone might be a real people person, and they might be a really inspiring leader, great at getting everyone motivated, and so that's what they'll always go to. But they won't be thinking. They won't think, I'm going to jump into a spreadsheet and do the numbers and work out what's actually going to make us the most money. Whereas someone else might have that view, but might not have any people skills, and so they might always do one but not the other. And I guess you need everything, and it's not just those two. There's obviously lots of different pieces.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like having complementary skill sets within a team. Like obviously you want to have management teams and leadership teams within not only mine sites, but businesses that like have complementary skill sets that you're like everyone's working cohesively with each other for a like outcome that everyone's aligned with, and everyone's making decisions aware of everyone else's other inputs and understanding like, what's the best for project outcomes holistically rather than just individually. Oh, this is what I'm good at, so therefore I'm going to do this. It's going to be, okay, well, let's work together collaboratively. I think that's like, I guess from a macro point of view, I from my conversations with our network within the industry, like I like to think that that's where the industry's going, is that sort of more collaboration type model, for particularly from a like contract miner to owner like relationship. Like I think there's too many war stories of like where it's gone bad and then relationships sour and all that sort of jazz. So it's like, okay, well, let's like take a step back and try and understand, okay, well, what do you need? What do we need? What do we bring? What do you bring? Let's work together to actually identify what is best for project or best for the mine site that we're all working together on. But yeah, having said that, like I may be completely wrong in that like everyone's going more hard dollar contracts and everyone's being more stricter and less relationship friendly. And that's the beauty of mining as well, is like it's so cyclical in nature, and like you only need to look at like the lithium mines that are currently like being put on care and maintenance, that were being touted as the like next big thing. Like I remember what Liontown only last year or a little while ago was like, oh, it's the next Northern Star that's going to print all these WA millionaires from lithium mine. So
no, it's interesting because we're talking about collaboration within a team, but then also between contractor and client. I feel like from my experience just in life in general, across different industries, everyone as a person tends to want to collaborate. But then like the business context they're put in can sometimes lead them to do otherwise. It's just all about incentives, and so having those.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what are you incentivizing? You'll then derive behavior to like align with that. And and there's good and bad outcomes. And we've seen plenty of things where that's been misaligned incentives across organizations.
Sure. And I guess tying that back into Hevi, then how do you see Hevi as kind of helping solve that problem, create a context that allows more collaboration, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, and it's probably again comes back to like where we started Hevi 2.5 years ago versus what it's sort of evolved into now. Like from a similar selfish reason, I guess when we started, it was all like we want to help mining contractors get paid more money. Like that's a selfish sort of value add person
background. Yep.
Exactly. Personally, it was like, I've got this personal pain point.
Stop that from happening.
Yeah. And there's a market for that, because I know there's a bunch of mining contractors who can make sure that they get paid more. Like there's a business model for that. And then, but as we've sort of matured and evolved and then sort of, had more conversations with people within industry, like I think it probably comes back to like what I was trying to say before around collaboration and, like joint incentives and sort of understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses and how you can work together. And I guess where we are trying to position ourselves from Hevi is like, the middleman, but less around sort of like a arbitrator or a mediator, but more around like, here's discrete analysis of a contract document. Here's some higher level understanding of that document and how it can relate to the day-to-day operations as they're happening on site, and then provide guidance to both buy and sell side of contracting teams to, I guess, take a step up rather than be in the weeds of, he said, she said stuff. It's like, okay, here's what's happening. Here's a high level view of what the contract says about that. How are we going to like no matter what Hevi does, we're not going to solve mining problems. There's always going to be like problems that arise operationally. And there's a bunch of other solutions that are trying to help in that space. But like, I guess from our perspective, it's like we're trying to provide that first point of call to like, okay, something's happened. What do I do? Here's what the contract says. Okay, I can take that information in real time to then work together as a collaborative team on site to make the best decisions for both parties and for the project.
Yeah, for sure. And it's super interesting because it sounds like that's actually going to help both parties to get what they get the best out of the project as well. Like, do you think a lot of the time these conflicts, which end up ultimately hurting the project, are caused by people not understanding the contract properly or just not having enough time? Or
it's a good question because there's like, what's the incentive for anyone to like do a major contract dispute that then each party spends tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal teams to go and fight? Like there's no incentive for either party apart from like ASP saving or protecting lost profits or whatever. So like, I guess, it's a good exercise to think about, to be like, okay, well, yeah, what's, again, macro level, like what are the sites trying to achieve, or what are projects trying to achieve holistically? How can we be a small piece of that, like, again, collaborative team and like workforce to get access to information in real time, like spend less time trying to analyze stuff and then argue about stuff, and just be like, okay, here's some information that's a point of variability. That's a data point. We've got a bunch of other data points that we need to take into account, and then let's work together to make a decision and move forward. Like that's like, I guess I'm probably preempting another question that's like, where's Hevi in 5 to 10 years time? But I think like that's where I think it'd be great to get to, is like, yeah, where it's less contractual disputes or less relationships going bad, less like just commercial issues, or like not necessarily less commercial issues, but less commercial issues that escalate to larger like company ruiners or project ruiners sort of stuff.
Yeah, almost like things getting solved in the moment, and so they don't have time to kind of snowball into the major ones that then bankrupt companies.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And we've been talking about the what, but we haven't really talked much about the how, the AI side of it. So like, how do you see AI being like a key enabler of doing this?
Well, I guess like, yeah, my less techie AI-ness than you like take on it would be like, I see and use AI to like distill information instantly. Like it's, for me personally, I don't Google anymore. It's like I chat GPT most things prior to Googling. And so it's like a version of that where it's like, hey, I need to get access to information. I've got this AI technology that can help me get access to that information instantly. Using Hevi is a way to get access to information based on contractual context. And then as a human, I can then take that information and make decisions that I'm paid to make, rather than spending time, whether it's doing a page turn of a contract, trying to find a relevant clause, or having an email back and forth with a head office commercial team or legal team to try and find an answer to something. It's like, okay, if I can reduce that time to zero, to then allow, like, give back time for people to be more productive in doing what they are supposed to be doing, rather than doing stuff that isn't value adding. Like a PM or a mining manager sitting on site reading a contract is not value add for anyone, is it? Like,
no, well, it's like that's not an outcome in itself. Like, the outcome you're driving towards is the decision getting made. So it takes 5 minutes to make that decision, or it takes 5 hours to make that decision. Like, it's better if it's the 5 minutes, as long as the decision is the same.
Oh, even like the argument could be made. It's like, okay, it's still an important decision, so I'm going to spend 5 hours on it. But you can spend 5 hours using Hevi or using like with AI assistance to go a hell of a lot deeper, like into a topic or understanding the nuances of stuff, rather than spending 4.5 hours of that time finding the initial answer to a question and then half an hour of working out the nuances. It's like, okay, within a minute I can find out my first answer, and then 5 minutes later I've then got some nuanced interpretation of some like analysis, and then I can nurture that and have conversations around it with different parties to fully sort of build a picture of what a best course of action may be.
No, for sure. And you started mentioning, you chat GPT now instead of Googling things. What are some other AI tools that you've been using lately that you now couldn't live without?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's from a personal perspective, I've got 3 kids. 2 of them are of schooling age, so asking questions about anything and everything. And again, like instead of Googling stuff, it's now using GPT-4o advanced voice, like to have conversations with kids about stuff. And recently we had a very intriguing conversation about the nuanced difference between fruits and vegetables with OpenAI voice assistant, and learned some crazy facts about different fruits and vegetables that I still didn't know until now. So like, I think having the power of that to like be able to get access to information instantly is massive. And then from a, I guess, like workflow perspective in what we're doing with Hevi, like there's a bunch of different tools that have just, like any modern software company is going to have an AI powered something within them, and stuff like Canva for editing like pictures, like this background that we have here, like was 3 minutes in Canva rather than, hey, we need a graphic designer to design something. And like those type of like, editing this recording, I'm going to upload it into an AI thing to help us edit it and like cut out stuff or make the audio clearer and delete my fan noise that's sitting here on the left. Like,
Yes, and no one can escape. If you're listening to this podcast, you have not escaped AI. You're already using it. And then, so I guess that then kind of leads into the last question of, so where are you like excited to see AI going? Within contracts and mining, but then just broadly worldwide.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I listened to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about like AI, like ChatGPT, consumer AI has been out for, it's going to be 2 years like now. And like how has everyone's lives changed? And it's like not that dramatically, like no one's lost their jobs yet because of AI. Like, there might be some customer support people who have like been half displaced by AI, or people aren't getting replaced, as sort of there's natural churn of people within businesses. But I like to think that I'm more utopic rather than dystopic view of AI, and that we're not going to build Skynet and end up in the Terminator. Like, I think that everything will just be AI assisted and AI powered. And I'd like to think that from a like personal human level, that everyone is still engaged in work and purposeful meaning work, but they're doing the same amount of work and getting paid the same or more money, but in 20% of the time. So like the Industrial Revolution, like introduced the 5-day work week. So like we may be able to like get to the point where the AI revolution flips it to be like, oh, we've got a 2-day work week now. And like, it's just common for everyone to be like, oh, I work Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday, and then every other day is a leisure day. Like, that's like, why can't that happen?
Yeah. Just work enough to find purpose and meaning in life, but still be able to balance it out with personal priorities.
Yeah, and then you can go down many rabbit holes about like if you can, because I also potentially believe that you'd be able to, like, AI will get to the point where you could be like, hey, I've got this problem that I want to solve with software or an AI tech. you could build like essentially a whole business as an AI agent and then deploy that, and then it's just working in the background, like that requires next to zero human intervention, because like in 10 years time, AI is just that good. Like, yeah, what problems are people solving? And then, yeah, how do you derive meaning within that? Like that's a conversation for 10 years time. But yeah, like there's those sorts of things are running through my head as we're plugged into the AI scene at the moment, I guess.
No, absolutely. Well, very cool stuff to look forward to. That's probably all we have time for today. So let's leave it there. I'll let you give us an outro.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Thanks for the session. It was great to dive deeper on some stuff there. So yeah, that's it for us today on today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Hevi AI Podcast, either on Spotify or YouTube, and leave us a review and share it amongst your friends within industry who might find some benefit from the insights and the chat that we've just had. And if you'd like to learn more about Hevi, then jump on over to our website, which is hevi.app. And thanks for listening, and have a great day.